Welcome back to this Board Game Officer. Today we're going to go through an interview where I went and sat down and talked with Eike Meyer, the designer of Midhalla. We're just going to go ahead and jump on into the interview, and I hope you enjoy it.
My first question, this is me being an American that doesn't know anything, right? How do you pronounce your name?
My name is called, in Germany, it's called Eike.
Eike. So
Yeah,
you do
exactly.
kind of pronounce that E a little bit.
Yeah,
And then, is that Meyer? I mean,
yeah,
with an American
exactly.
accent.
Exactly.
How how do you say it with actually in German?
Um, Meyer.
Meyer. Okay.
So I just don't pronounce the R as much. So it's besides that, it's exactly the same. No, we're not related. So he was a co-designer. Yeah, so he worked as a co-designer together with me. So we started out creating this as designers together. And after 1.5 years or so, when it was going in the direction of publishing, we then decided that probably it wasn't the best thing for him to go into publishing because he wasn't like in that publishing space that much. Because game design is just like a very small percentage of bringing out an entire game. It's maybe I would say 20%. And like if you don't want to do the business side and all the publishing stuff of things, it will be very, very hard, I think, to get to the finish line. So, um,
Okay. Yeah. I think in my unboxing video I was like, oh, I wonder if that's his brother because you have the same last name.
yeah, I mean,
Completely wrong there I was.
yeah. But a lot of people actually assume that, and but Maya is one of the
Yep.
most common German names. So we actually met up in when we were
Oh.
going through university together. So that's where we met, and we've been friends
Oh,
ever
really?
since. Um, we've
Oh,
been
that's
friends for a
cool.
long time before we started this project, and so yeah, we've known each other for ages. I think it's 2 decades now or something.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Midhalla.
Hmm?
So, right before anything, what was the conception of Midhalla? Like, where did it start? How did it start? Kind of give me the background on that.
How did it start? Well, so at some point, well, I've been like a geek ever since my entire life. I've been just playing games of any kind, and I've
Uh-huh.
also like really enjoyed designing things or creating things. So I've been a dungeon master and role
Okay.
playing games and played
Mm.
loads and loads of different games. And I always was thinking about like creating and publishing my own game. But just at some
Uh-huh.
point, I think it was sometime during COVID where everything was home office anyway. I said like, okay, I'm just kind of leaving this other job, so why not kind of get put some energy into starting this?
Yeah.
And yeah, and then we got together and started working on the kind of core engine of things. And yeah, that's pretty much how it started, and was just kind of pulling together
All
some
right.
ideas. We both like tower defense games, and we both like dungeon crawls,
Mm-hmm.
and we both like strategic, thinky games. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
connected us in that space, and where we said, okay, let's do something around that space.
And kind of mesh it all together.
Yeah, it just evolved like iteratively. It wasn't like, okay, let's put exactly this vision that you see as Midhalla now on the
Yeah.
board. But it kind of started out as yeah something with dungeon crawl ish, tower defense ish maybe, and then
So that leads right into my next question. How has it evolved from the very initial of like putting on the table trying to play it? Would you say it's like a completely different game than what you like initially set out for, or do you feel like it's similar, or what's your thoughts on like how it has evolved since the beginning?
uh, no, it has been like vast. Well, like the I would say like the general idea of making a dungeon crawler and or tower defense ish game, that's still the same, but a lot of it has evolved. Like for
Hmm.
example, the first playthrough of Midhalla that we ever brought to the table, you couldn't complete the game, so like you weren't able
Oh,
to meet the ultimate goal, so it didn't make sense to play it. And then we iterated. So
yeah.
a lot of game design process is about iterating and trying it and improving and then trying again. And so then we changed that, and then you could play it. But like the first game originally, Midhalla was like 8 hours long, and that's a
Oh
two-player
man.
game. So if you were playing four players, you played 16 hours of Midhalla. No one would, very few people would be up for like a 16-hour gameplay session. So
Yeah.
like one of the major things I did early on in the game was reducing the complexity and bringing it down in terms of playtime. And then we added new things to it because we had new great ideas what to do with it. Like yeah, you can like do this what you see now as with the exploration. We had a little bit of that, not to the degree that it has now, but a bit of that, and then the economy stuff and all that in, and then new enemies and things. And then at some point, again, we were at like 6 hours playtime, and was like, okay, we have all this cool stuff. But how can we really boil that down to keep all the good stuff in, but
Yeah.
bring the playtime down? And like there were some tough choices in cutting some things out that we didn't like, or that weren't as important. But for example, the leveling in Midhalla was one aspect. Like you level 3 times in Midhalla, and we wanted to keep that because that gives a lot of dynamic to the characters. But how do you make a good leveling, put a good leveling process in the game if you can't have like the same length? So you need to kind of find ways around that. And one thing that you can see in the game design nowadays is that you level up when you start a new chapter in Midhalla. You will always level your character to level 1 right at the beginning. So
Yeah.
that kind of process is part of narrowing down that playtime. So you don't have to play through a full wave first to get to that level 1.
For that.
Which also makes it more interesting
Okay.
in the end because you start out as a slightly different character every time, even if you play the same character. So you will have a
Yeah.
slightly different skill set, which makes it interesting to play. But that's actually a result of cutting down the playtime. So
Interesting. So that's actually, I've never actually thought about that. I've thought about, what it takes to create a game, that designing from day one to the Kickstarter campaign and to delivery. So I actually played this with my nieces and nephews and trying to get them into gaming and stuff. And so I, jumped in and I was letting them know that this is a prototype and, so it's in the works. And they're just like, how do you come up with this? And I've never thought about the fact that you want everything, like all your ideas, but you put all your ideas on paper and it's 100 years long rather than, so you have to like, it's almost like editing a movie. It's like, well, I love this part, but I love other parts better, so we're gonna have to cut that out. That's funny. That's actually, I've never thought about that. I like that.
yeah, that's pretty close,
So,
I would say. Yeah, like one game design
yeah.
philosophy that I've always tried to follow is I wanted a complex game, so a challenging game, but I don't like complicated games. So like I want to add complexity, but remove complications that make it difficult to get into the game or to play the game. And you can also see that like through the different phases that you have in the game, for example, which are very clearly distinct. So you do exploration, but unlike some other dungeon crawlers where you start opening doors, even though your friends are still getting beaten down by the orcs on the room, like makes
Yep, and
sense.
they all yell at you. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like I would not dungeon crawl with the same guys again in the future dungeon. Like that's
Yeah.
not how you go into combat, or start looting stuff or whatever. So here it's strictly separate. For the one thing that it makes sense, but also for the other reason that actually like to keep people in the story. For example, I wanted to add story, and if you want to experience a story,
Yeah.
you don't want to at the same time want to constantly think about like combat strategy at the same time. So this is why it's separate. You explore the dungeon, and then at some point you encounter combat, and then you go into the combat. And at that point, you don't have to think about the story. You're fully engaged and immersed in the combat at that part. So that's also
Yeah.
one reason why it's separate. And you can also just keep people focused on the rules that are currently relevant in the current phase.
Yeah. So going into like what we were talking about with the different aspects and stuff you had to cut down, I have 2 questions with that. One is, what is your favorite thing that where Midhalla is out now? What's your favorite thing about Midhalla in general that you're like, I love this part of the game that we created?
For me, like I'm a very strategic player, and I'm not a big fan of rolling dice and losing because of luck, which you can clearly see in the design of this game. So, like I love Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is my favorite game of all time. I really, really like it. But the one thing that I would like differently in that game, probably the most, would be like not as much luck in terms of the combat deck mechanics. So Midhalla doesn't
Yeah.
have that. It's really deterministic, and it works. And that's like the thing I enjoy the most, and probably also the thing that I'm most proud of, that we were able to make that work in a game and make that actually enjoyable. So that's really something that I really, as a
Yeah.
player, really like. So deterministic combat all the way. Yes, please, in any game. As long as it's done
Yeah.
right, obviously. Um,
Yeah. Yes. Like noting with Gloomhaven, there's only one miss card in your deck unless you get cursed. But I swear that
Yeah.
one miss card, it's always on top. No matter how much you shuffle it,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's always gonna be that miss.
Yeah. Exactly. Like if you have the best plan in the world and then it can ruin like two or three rounds of build up, and that's like the one thing that I say like I would just wish it wasn't this plan was working. And like with Midhalla, you have to
Yep.
plan, but then you also say, oh yeah, I love it when a plan comes together. Great. Um, yeah.
Yep. And when it doesn't go to plan, you know who to blame.
Yes.
Like I just finished my chapter 3 playthrough and I was like, okay, I had this whole strategy. I was like, sweet, I'm gonna move here, so that's gonna force them to come this way, and then that was gonna do damage. The traps will do damage to him. I was like, this is perfect. And it goes, and the damage kills the bomb guy, the kobold bomber, and I was like, oh no, and he destroyed my trap. I was like, oh, and I was the only one to blame because it was just my strategy that was not good. So yes, I really enjoyed that. I like it makes it more thinky than like, well, I want to do this. Let's just see if it works out. Where it's
Yeah.
really like, hey, this is what I want to do. I know this is going to happen, and so you can be as strategic as you want, really.
Yeah. Pretty much. And
So now going kind of the other way, what was one of the saddest things that you had to cut from the game for time reasons? If you don't want to divulge anything of what it's been, that's fine too. But what was one thing like, oh, I love this part, but it just takes too much time, or it becomes too crunchy, or for whatever reason you decide to take it out of the game?
so like the probably the biggest challenge for me was more like of a publishing thing almost, because when it comes to publishing, and especially like I always said I wanted heroes to have heroes as miniatures would be really cool, because like if you can paint them it's
Mm-hmm.
more personal and it's really nice to have these heroes as miniatures. And one of the things about that is that miniatures are extremely expensive because you have to create molds for them, and that becomes less of an issue if you have like a game that is well known and where you know like thousands of people are going to come in and buy my game. But as an indie publisher, you don't know that. So you need to kind of limit the amount of classes and heroes that you put into the game. So I could have
Mm-hmm.
like I've created some really cool heroes and classes that I would have loved to put in, but I wasn't able to bring all of those in the game. Hopefully, if the campaign goes well, I will be able to bring some of them back. I'll see about that,
Mm-hmm.
but like not to the degree that I've created everything. So there's still like some things in the back of my head that I say, I would really love this one class in the game, and
Yeah.
it's one of the classes is definitely not going to make it into the game also because it doesn't fit story wise. But if the game works well, I really would love my favorite class to go in maybe into a future expansion or something at some point. Because it's just I really
Okay.
love playing this one person. I'm not going to spoil it here
Yeah.
because maybe in the future I can bring that back.
So that comes into my next question. So you can decide not to say anything, right? Because this is your game. You can divulge whatever you want of the game. But so I guess I have a couple part question here. We'll go with the first one. In the Midhalla that you have now, which character is your favorite? Because I know there's only 4 in the prototype right now,
Yes.
but I mean they each have their upgraded side. I'm not sure or their tier 2 side.
Yeah, they're
And then I
at tier
also
two.
saw on the list there's 2 others that were on like the campaign sheet at the back. So you can divulge
Yes.
whatever you want, but out of what there is, which one is your favorite character to play as right now?
So from the base game, I would say I like backstabbing characters who can hide in the shadows and stuff. So
Okay.
obviously it's Arn the scout who can hide in the shadows and who's really fast and has these combo
Yeah.
thingies. I really playing these kind of classes. Um, and if we add the expansion to the number of characters, there's this
Hmm.
character which is also at the heart of the story. So I'm going to spoil a little bit here, but not too much. At the heart of
Okay.
the story of the expansion, which has like an added saga where you can also play the characters from the base game, but the other ones also get added. And the
Oh.
character who's at the heart of the saga, like he's like really thematic because he's been plagued by this curse of lightning and like that's destroying
Oh.
stuff. And so actually the character is more complex to play, but actually he has like these partially negative aspects to it, to some of the skills, and so you need to see like how do you want to use these and to which degree, and because it may hurt you eventually. And so seeing this, like this is something that I like complexity in
Oh,
characters
and
generally is something that I really enjoy playing as well. And this fits so well with this theme for me at least.
so what you're saying is you like being that person where you don't look scary, but in
Mhm.
reality you're probably the most deadly character of them all.
Yeah, I like these
Right? You're
underdog.
not that barbarian berserker.
Yeah, exactly. Like something where it looks. nice at the beginning, and then it's like, okay, what the hell is happening? This is something that I really
Yep. So that feeds into this next one. In general, like you said, you're a DM or GM, whatever you would like to call those, or when you're playing anything, is like that rogue type character your go-to, or what's your go-to character usually in any game in general?
I would probably distinguish between like playing like tabletop RPGs where I really like to go into a specific character and role play things, where I try to make up like crazy stories and like often like sometimes a bit conflicting characters with deep background stories who can be like really strange. Like for example, I played like the best warrior ever in one RPG, but he was a pacifist because he said I never touch a sword again. Having this character who has that power but never uses it, for example, and which can be really annoying for the party because they all say, "Oh, we're really struggling." And says, "No, I'm not going to be using a sword. I will just defend myself with my own fists." Things like that.
That's awesome.
But like if it comes to games with where you play a character for strategy part, like Gloomhaven or something, for example, I don't know if I'm allowed to spoil classes here for Gloomhaven. Because I don't know.
I'll put a little note here that says warning.
All right, so I'm just going to say the name. So the Night Shroud, for example, is my Gloomhaven class. I really like this assassin kind of style character there. Again, similar to Arn the Scout a little bit, maybe to some degree. But I also love, for example, if you look at Spirit Island, there's this expansion character with the Shattered Earth expansion, I think it's called, where you have the Finder of Paths Unseen, which is this bird that can't destroy anything, but who connects all the lands that he's in. And so you can actually, the whole gameplay gets changed by that character. And I think it's the only very high complexity character in the game. So it's like, it really mixes up all the game mechanics and makes things like even more challenging and complex. And that's something that I also really enjoy playing.
Okay. Makes it a little bit more thinky.
Yeah.
This is kind of backtracking a little bit, but what brought you into designing a game? You talked about during COVID, you've always had that design aspect of wanting to do that, but what really put you down? Because I feel like that's a big jump to like actually say, hey, I'm going to design a game and actually go through to publish it. So what was like, how did that begin? What brought that about to design the game?
Yeah. Probably I've always enjoyed designing games. So I think at the age of 6 or something, I designed like a small trick-taking game where you play around with sun lotions and try to kind of take the cards off each other. Obviously, that was just for friends and family, like written on pieces of paper.
Yeah.
But like going through that design and creative process is something that I've always enjoyed. Also, when I was playing video games when I was young, like as a kid, I played through these games and then I was writing on paper. I was creating, like, if I were to create an expansion for that or a new version of that game, how would that go? What would be the storyline? What would be game elements? So I wrote this stuff, for example, on paper. Sometimes because like my parents didn't buy me the original game, so I just read it in the magazines and then just started writing my own story around that, how I would create this kind of game. And then later evolved into, for example, then when I got into Warhammer and tabletop games, I created my own army lists for like made up armies that I created myself, or I don't know, like also in like playing pen and paper role playing games. The role I take up most is like dungeon master or game master in these kind of games. So I like to imagine my own stories and campaigns, and like sometimes also create separate rules for them, which I find better suited for the gameplay that I want to see there, and these kind of things. So like creating games has always been like part of my hobby and things that I did. I never published any of those, but like I definitely invested loads and loads of, probably not hours, but definitely weeks or months or maybe even years, I don't know, into designing games that I never put in the direction of publishing. And and then at some point I was just like, okay, I've been doing this for a long time. I really like it, and like I've been working in IT consulting for like over a decade, and so at some point I said, okay, this intellectually it's challenging and interesting, but like just in terms of what I'm doing, when I stand up in the morning, it's more satisfying for me to create a game than, I don't know, create a new banking app or something and be in charge of that, for example. So it's just something that's a little bit close to what I like doing, and so that was just kind of like, okay, let's see if I can make that happen.
Yeah, that's really cool. So this was not like a thing when you got older. You're like, yeah, this is what I want. This has just kind of been a part of who you are as a
Yeah,
designer. Was what it sounds like.
yeah, maybe.
That
So it's pretty much always been
yeah,
something.
it's your destiny.
Maybe we'll see how it goes. Definitely
Yeah,
like something
yeah.
that I really enjoy and I would love doing going forward as well and keep doing.
All right. So my next question kind of goes along with kind of what you just talked about. Is what brought you into the board gaming RPG world? Because it sounds like it's been a part of you for most of your life. Have you
Yeah.
always been into like these more strategic games, or what kind of got you into this hobby in general?
Um, yeah, gaming has been a part of my life, definitely, and like it's always been like when I was younger, we had like games to play. So I played chess with my dad when I was like I don't know 8 years or
Hmm.
something, and um, constantly kept losing against him because he never let me win on purpose. But that's like it took a few
Yeah.
years to actually beat him, but so that was still fun for me, and I like yeah. And then I don't know how I got into these fantasy kind of things. I just at some point I saw like a pen and paper role playing game in like it wasn't a regular
Mm.
store somewhere where they was just selling off some of the remaining items, and I was saying, okay, this looks cool. Let's just buy it and see, and then. From that, I got into RPG games, and then at some point we had our local gaming store that opened up in the small town I was living in back then. So I got in touch with Magic the Gathering and like the Warhammer and all
Oh.
that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and and then like Settlers of Catan brought me back a bit more towards board gaming like during these years. But then it took like a long time
Yeah.
actually for me to get into like I wouldn't call them real board games, but more in the deep side of board games, which actually happened like years ago or something when a friend of mine
Oh.
back then I barely knew him, but he showed me Agricola and Power Grid were one of the
Mm.
first games I saw, and
Oh.
I'm seeing Power Grid and thought like, okay, wow, this is possible in a board game. That's so cool. And then I started expanding and looking around for myself, and yeah, I think 2 years
Yeah.
later I was at Essen Spiel and I came out with the Essen Spiel, like
Oh.
the biggest board game convention in the world, or among
Yep.
the biggest board games conventions. I think there's a few in the US which are a similar size, but there's so many new games coming out every year there, and I came out with huge bags of games, and it's like, oh, wow. Um, yeah, probably was
Yeah.
like the worst purchasing series of my life, or the best, however you want to see it. Um,
Yeah.
so that was super cool. And then we had this very
I,
small car, and it was four of us, so we had to get all the board games in and all the people in, so that everyone was like stacked full of board games, and only the driver had no board games.
yes.
That was really fun.
That sounds like, I'm just gonna say yes, it was the best board game purchase of it. Not the worst, it's definitely the best.
Yeah, probably.
That's awesome. All right. So I'm gonna kind of edit a little picture or input a picture here.
Mhm.
Tell me about Princess Candy Sparkles, the Berserker Unicorn. What is that about?
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty niche thing about Midhalla because that is actually the Berserker Unicorn. It was actually an April Fool's joke that I created as an April
Oh,
Fool's joke.
really?
So it's just like, okay, for April Fools, let's put in like a Berserker Unicorn, which is something that's completely off the track of anything that I've created. Because all the lore in Midhalla,
Yeah.
pretty serious. I want to keep things immersive. So publishing the Berserker Unicorn was like, okay, let's do this as a joke. Um,
Yeah.
the thing is that it got so much attention and so many people actually liked it that I will have to probably do a print and play version of it or something, or maybe I don't know if I can
Hmm.
put it in the product because maybe it's too expensive, but I will definitely have to put a print and play version out for people because there's some dedicated fans to that, and like they've already suggested like the Twilight Unicorn, who is the enemy of Princess Candy Sparkles, and so I don't know. Maybe at some point I will create Midhalla Junior or something, and then put
Yeah.
those in as like true characters. I don't know, but it's kind of gotten evolved by itself beyond what I originally intended it to be.
That is
But it's
awesome.
fully
I was just,
playable.
what was that?
But it's fully playable, so you can play the character,
Oh.
and like she has like she can feed on candy and put up her hit points. She can improve like put out multi attacks, and she can even offer other characters a ride, so you can ride on her to other destinations.
Oh, really? Oh.
So she is fully developed and she is playable and has been tested. So if I ever put if
All
someone
right.
wants, it is possible.
I might have to do a playthrough. I might go do a print off of what you have on your Facebook page and do like a really short playthrough of it because I don't know. I think that's awesome. I like little funny, weird off things like that. I might even for like the thumbnail for this video, I might do like a blacked out unicorn, put like Berserker Unicorn or something for the thumbnail of this. I don't know. Maybe I won't. Maybe that's too much attention towards that. But
Yeah,
um,
like it's definitely a fun game element. I feel like there's two different kind of
uh
people. One people who like these really
mm,
quirky jokes, and there's other people who say like, no, this is too immersion breaking. So depends on
yeah,
which side you're on. You may like it or not. A lot of people liked it. I personally, I would normally not want them too much integrated into the lore because it becomes too weird.
yeah,
But you can
yeah,
definitely play it. So if you just want to play it for fun, definitely possible. So.
yeah. That's awesome. So going into that, well, kind of into that. What brought you to this Viking type of theme for Midhalla? Where did that idea come from?
That came because or I'm living like 1 hour away from a Viking trading post, an old Viking. It's not there anymore, but there's a
Oh,
museum there right now, and they have rebuilt some of the houses as well, so you can visit some of the things like how it looked back then, nowadays.
oh, that's
And so
cool.
when I was creating the theme, when I was thinking, okay, which kind of theme works well with this kind of game. Um, I always liked fantasy, but I didn't want to do just the
Hmm.
standard fantasy kind of thing. And so I said like something local. So Vikings are cool. I like Vikings, but let's mix it up because I also want to create my own narratives, my own lore behind the whole world. So you don't have like the usual gods that you know from Viking mythology, but you have other
Hmm.
gods instead. So I've created my own pantheon, my own demons and everything. So the whole world has its own story and narrative. But you will see like some parallels to some of the Norse mythology or Viking mythology that you maybe know from common literature or movies or things.
Hmm. Okay, that's really cool. Especially because we talked about this because I put a little bit of this in my unboxing, but I also
Mhm.
saw that your one of your titles within Foreign West Foreign how do you say your company?
Fern West Games. Fern West
Okay,
Games.
Foreign West Games. So
Hmm?
Foreign West, correct?
Fern.
All right, Foreign West Games,
Hmm.
Fern West Games.
Yeah, Fern
I'll
West,
get it one of
exactly.
these times. I also saw your title as Jarl. Can you explain what
Hmm.
Jarl is? That how you say that one? Jarl? Jarl?
Jarl. Jarl would
Y'all.
be the.
I was way wrong. You do the like the
Yeah,
German
so the,
J.
yeah, so the yeah, exactly. So like the Jarl would be like it's a Viking leader, and so who is governing a certain region, for example. And so the Jarl essentially because Fern West Games essentially is me. So
Hmm.
I've founded the games brand or company behind that, and essentially like I'm working together with different partners, but essentially it's me bringing all this together. So that's
Hmm.
which was why I put Jarl in the title. I could have put like CEO or something stuff like that, but I felt like Jarl is a lot
Yeah.
more appropriate for something Vikingish. So um,
Yeah.
hence the
I thought that
Jarl.
was pretty cool when I saw that. So going in because there's a character that's a Jarl, right? Is Torah,
Yeah.
right? Is she the Jarl?
Yes.
Is there or is the characters are they based off of anybody in your life or are they completely just fantasy that you've made up or do you feel like there's people that you've been basing some of the characters off of?
No, I didn't base them on any real person. So I don't know. There's always this title. All characters in this are not related to any real people or something like that. Uh, so
Yeah.
that is definitely the case for Midhalla. I didn't base any characters on
Okay.
people I know or like or even characters in literature. So all the characters that you encounter in the game are definitely fictional. There is one character which I don't even know if she's in the current story, but there is
Mm.
one character in the mythology of Midhalla who is called Thalia, and she is the
Mm.
daughter of. She's related to the gods in some way, and this character
Okay.
is actually named after my daughter. So that's the only character that is somewhat
Oh.
related um, to
Yeah,
the
at least
game.
by name.
Yeah, exactly. And
That,
maybe by temperament
yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So, outside of board games and design and everything, what other kind of hobbies do you do on on a daily basis?
So like right now, hobby number one, or I wouldn't call it maybe a hobby, but it's definitely like spending time with my daughter. She's 3.5 years old, and so
Oh, okay.
she knows how to keep me busy, and we're playing a lot, and yeah, so that's definitely one major part of my time that I spend. Um,
Yeah.
Hobby-wise, everything around gaming. So obviously, I also play board games, but also play video games.
Mm,
So anything
okay.
around that, something that I really enjoy. I don't have that much time besides that. If you add that up together with the part about publishing a board game, which takes up a huge amount of time, especially
Yeah.
everything by yourself. Um, so
Especially with
that's
the Kickstarter coming up, that's gonna be super busy, I'm sure.
yeah, definitely. Like so, I rarely get to go to bed before 2 a.m. nowadays, but
Oh
hopefully it
man.
gets better once the adrenaline comes down a little bit after the Kickstarter. Um,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah, and that's like I also like kite surfing, but I don't get to do it at the moment a lot,
Oh,
and so that's something that I really enjoy. And then pen
yeah.
and paper role playing games obviously is something that I still play usually, but now I don't have
Okay.
that much time for it. But that would be
Yeah.
something that I do. And yeah, just generally like meeting up with friends, obviously, and the usual stuff that other people do as well. Those kind
Yeah.
of things.
Awesome. So, I was gonna ask this question at the very beginning, and I missed it on my little notes here. What is Midhalla? Like that name? Did
Mhm.
that? What I guess does it mean something like an old Viking tongue or something, or is that just something you came up with?
No, I actually came up with that when I was thinking about the name. So there's
Hmm.
Midgard and there's Valhalla, and if you just merge the two together, you come to
Ah,
Valhalla. So essentially,
okay.
um, that's where the name comes from, and yeah, that's essentially also like sometimes people ask like, how do you pronounce this? Like, is it Midala or whatever? No, just pronounce it if you were
Yeah.
as if you were bringing the two words together, and you find like Midhalla, and that's it. But that's actually where the name
Nice.
comes from. So it's just the game's actually the meaning is only in the game where it's Midhalla is this village of guardians where you're a part of with your
Hmm.
characters, and they're kind of tasked with protecting these dungeons. But other than that, like it doesn't have any prior meaning.
Okay. Nice. I think that's always kind of fun because this is once again me coming from a non-designer point of view, right? Is of how to come up with names, right? Because your
Yeah.
game has so much lore, so much behind it. How do you narrow that down to one word or 1 to 2 words? Was it hard to come up with that name, or was that like you heard of it, you're like, yes, I love it, that's what I want to go with?
I actually don't recall. I just know that when it comes to names, I often like have different names in my head, and then I sometimes compare them against each other. And sometimes it's just like, okay, click this. This is it. So it really
Hmm.
changes from name to name. I don't really remember how it was with Midhalla. I definitely wanted to know have something that sounds Viking-ish. So,
Yeah.
but I don't really remember how many iterations it took me to get to that name. I think there were quite a few other thoughts in my head back then, and then at
Oh,
some point
really?
that just came to my mind. And that's actually something that also happens during the
Yeah.
design process a lot. Like sometimes it's something where you say, okay, I want to solve this problem now, like make this mechanic better, or want to create a flow that works for players or whatever. And then you
Hmm.
work through that, and you have a solution to that. And at other times, just like this thing has been lying there, this mechanic or whatever has been lying there and being there in a certain way at a certain quality. And at, like, for example, the hero boards and the mechanics, how the hero boards work. At some point, I
Hmm.
just woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning and was like, okay, let's not do any card play with characters. Let's go for boards and let's go for some action rotation system. And then I wrote all that down at 5 a.m. or 5:30 in the morning and started playing around with how that could work, and essentially ended up with a version of how you play heroes nowadays. So
That's awesome. So basically, it was probably this like premonition while you were dreaming, and that just like came to you to make this game the way it is.
yeah, definitely. So that
Excuse me.
kind of randomly appeared somewhere. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Divine inspiration is what we call
Yeah,
it.
probably then divine inspiration. I'll go with yeah.
Yeah. All right. So kind of closing up here, what what is something that you want to share with all the viewers here? What do you want to share about the game? Whether that be more interesting background, your favorite part of the lore itself, rather than gameplay. What's something that you want to? Is there something that you want to say about the game in general?
Mm, just thinking like so like lore. I could like there's I've got tens of pages or maybe even hundreds of pages of lore on my computer. I'm not. Don't worry, it's not all in the game, so you won't be
Yep.
seeing everything of that. But that's something that like I really enjoy doing is also bring some yeah, some narrative and theme to the game, and so you will be seeing some of these things that I've on my computer. We will be seeing that in the stories that Midhalla is telling, but not all of that. Some of that will be hidden away. So just so it stays consistent, I need that to create my own stories.
Hmm.
And yeah, just like yeah, it's there's just so many things that I could tell, so it's hard to narrow it down to one thing. Maybe
I know
one
that's
thing
such a big question.
is, yeah, like there's maybe this one thing that I about the bear that you see also on the Midhalla
Oh,
cover up there. So the one
uh-huh.
thing about that bear is that these bears, for example, have their own law behind them. So some people have asked me, okay, why do you have this
Oh,
bear up there? Isn't that like cruelty on animals and so on? This is actually a demon. It's not an animal. So don't worry, you're not hurting animals in that game. Everything that you are fighting against is
yeah.
all demons. And these bears are actually the children of Bjorn, the board of the god of battle in this world of Midhalla. And
Oh.
so he created so they are kind of his spirit animals or whatever you want to call them, and they are
Hmm.
essentially good animals usually. But there's this one goddess who has fallen from grace with all the other gods and has created all the demons in this world
Oh.
from her own blood, and like
Uh,
this these demons, and she has taken actually the bears of Bjornjarl and corrupted them into these demonic beings. Hence you have these demon bears in this world,
huh.
which are like so just to kind of spite her brother
Okay.
Bjornjarl. And so this is part of doing that. And so if you encounter these demon bears, you will be fighting them, but also you will encounter potentially, as a small spoiler, you will also potentially encounter through events things about the bears from Bjornjarl himself, and these
Okay.
can actually happen in the game, and this can evolve into something really cool or really bad for you, depending on how you deal with the situation around that. Um,
That's that's awesome. I did have a question with that, and that answers it because I saw that there's a little standee. There's a
mhm.
standee of the demon bear, but then there was
Yes.
also a standee of a bear, which in my play I didn't see at all. And I was like, "There's a random bear." Like I didn't see like an enemy card for the normal looking bear. So that's actually really cool. Really cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's
I
actually
like those
exactly.
tidbits behind the lore like that.
Yeah, that's where it really ties into that. And that's also one part of this game element that I put in there, which is an evolving event deck where you start off with a certain set of events and you draw from that pile when you draw an event. But at some point, you may take decisions which are on the event cards, which then lead you to remove this event card from the event deck and put in new cards. And this is based on the
Mm.
decisions you take or the quests which may be on these cards and which may change things. And so, yeah, these kind of things tie into this some of
Yeah.
these lore things, for example, or other aspects of the game as well.
Okay. That's one thing I wanted to comment too that I really liked with the exploration phase. I thought it was really cool. Two things that I thought was cool. One, the fact that there's multiple ways to explore. You don't know when it's going to end, right?
Mhm.
You might go in and it's like, oh, go to the preparation phase now. You're like, I was wanting to get more items. I wanted to get more silver or anything. But then one thing that I really like, at least in chapter 3, that I hope we'll see more often is hints of where to go, right? Because you're
Yeah,
looking for, oh, now I forgot his name in chapter 3, but
Corazon,
you're looking. Say that again.
Corazon the Seer.
Yes, that one. As you know, I've been horrible with names or with
Yeah,
pronunciation. I have my own pronunciation, but
which is fine. Like, it will be pronounced
yeah,
differently across the world, so that's totally
yeah.
cool.
But you got to one place and it's like, oh, you see them, or you hear something in this area. I like those little hints of like, hey, there might
Yeah,
be something over there. It might be bad, but you
yeah,
hear something over there. I really like those little hints of where to go. So it's not just a any, meeny, miny, mo, but it's more of a, hey, here's some hints. It might be a bad hint, or it might be a good hint.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's also like I put that in to some degree, but not too much because there's people like you who pick up on these things, but there's also players who are more like, okay, tunnel, let's go, I don't care. Let's just kill demons, and you can play it both ways if
Yeah.
you want to. Of course, it's maybe cooler to appreciate the story a little bit, but you can also, if you want to just go and slay demons, that's definitely possible as well.
Yeah. And one last comment here that I have just for my gameplay. So I actually did chapter 1 and 2, the tutorials, with my nieces and nephews. So we played 4 of us. And then when I went on to chapter 3, I did it solo, so I just played 2 characters. And I really enjoyed how strategy was different, just with the different characters. Even, all the enemies' health is lower, so it's balanced in that way. But even the strategy was different, which what tiles I want to fortify, because with 4 players, we're like, all right, let's just split up 2 and 2.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's simple, but it was a pretty easy go-to. Where then I went to two players, and I was like, wait, I can't go 1-on-1. That's too scary to be off by myself. So I had to like totally change up my strategy of what I was doing just because on player count. And so I really like that changing player count can even change your strategy and tactics throughout the game. That I really enjoyed.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, also depends strongly on which classes you play and how you want to play around that. And especially if you unlock advanced classes, it will then alternate as well. So you definitely have to like alter your strategy towards your characters. And yeah, with 2 players, it becomes maybe even a little bit more tricky. But on the other hand side, you have a little bit less information to digest because it's fewer players. So there's but overall, yeah, the game works pretty much at all player counts as far as I've heard, and also from all the testing. So it's just a little bit different in terms of how you play it.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. Well, anything else before we end here?
So the one thing that I would say, if you at any point have any questions, just reach out either through the comments on Kickstarter or just any other way, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the game. So just let me know if there's anything I can do.
So with that, so this comes from a question of just being a backer of other campaigns, which I'm sure you have been a backer of games as well.
Yes.
What? Yeah. So do you? I'm trying to think of how to word this question right. Because a lot of times that happens, especially with indies, and I don't think anybody does this maliciously. It's just kind of what happens as an indie company, right? You're kind of right? That you're the company.
Yeah.
Do you have anyone to help you through those comments to get through both during the Kickstarter and after? Or do you have a plan to make sure you kind of stay on top of comments or anything throughout the Kickstarter and after the Kickstarter?
So I have one person who is helping me with the comments. So we're actually 2 people working through the comments because I have like a coach who is coaching me a little bit because he's also been involved in the industry for a longer time, and he has been part of many Kickstarter campaigns before, either doing them himself with his own games, but or coaching other people through it. And so he will also be there to help with answering comments and getting through that. And then it's myself, so we will both be in the comments, obviously. But I'll also always be available on other channels when I can be. Through Discord or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say down in the comments below, I will put both a link to the Kickstarter and also a link to the Discord, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
to
sure.
kind of get, because that's one thing I've noticed with games is I love being part of the Discord of that game because you get a lot more specific questions and everything. Where I feel like the Kickstarter, you get Kickstarter questions, where Discord is a lot more gameplay and stuff. And so I like to get more people there because then there's more people to comment and talk about it with. So
yeah,
if that's
definitely
okay with you, I'll put that in the link down below too.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I also like do sometimes community questions or something that I can't really put to Kickstarter, but I can put for the Discord, for example, to get some feedback. So if people want to be more involved in the process. Not all Kickstarter backers want to be deeply involved in the design or creation of the product. Some do, some don't. So the Discord is a bit more like the closer community of those who really want to go more in depth.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Alright, so there you have Eike Meyer. Awesome, incredible, fun guy. If you want to see more about Midhalla, go ahead and click here, where there will be an unboxing of Midhalla, of the prototype, or click right here, there's going to be a Chapter 3 playthrough. And I will see you later.